In the winter of 1942, in occupied Upper Silesia, the labor camp still followed a routine that appeared intact. Snow settled evenly on barracks roofs, roll calls happened at fixed hours, and guards smoked quietly near the gates. Prisoners moved as instructed, eyes lowered, blankets folded the same way each morning. Nothing suggested disruption yet, only a calm that depended entirely on obedience and exhaustion. Among the prisoners was Anton Koholchik, a former textile worker taken months earlier during a factory roundup. He was not remarkable in build or skill, known only for repairing torn fabric with patience learned before the war. His blanket was already damaged, edges frayed from repeated inspections. At night, he listened to guards counting bodies, memorizing pauses and habits without appearing to watch. Authority tightened gradually. New orders arrived without explanation, inspections became longer, and a second perimeter fence appeared beyond the first. Rumors circulated quietly, passed during soup lines and latrine queues, always unfinished. Some prisoners stopped speaking altogether. Others wrote names on scraps of paper and hid them in seams. The camp still functioned, but the sense of being temporary had vanished completely. The first breach came not with violence, but with a schedule change. One evening count was delayed, then repeated twice. Guards argued softly while prisoners stood motionless. Anton noticed the way numbers were checked against a clipboard, never against faces. That night, in the barrack, he tore his blanket carefully, separating its layers into uneven strips, working slowly in the dark. At dawn, an order required selected prisoners to move between compounds. Confusion followed, brief and contained. Anton wrapped the blanket strips around his shoulders and arms, shaping bulk where his body was thin. When he joined the line, the guards counted silhouettes through falling snow, seeing only familiar forms. No one questioned the extra shape beneath the cloth that morning. This moment survives only because fragments remain in transport lists and marginal notes, written by hands that never returned. Those who wish to understand how routine concealed fragile chances may find more in letters, camp reports, and diaries that endured quietly beyond the war, waiting to be read without urgency or promise, only attention and patience. The line moved. Boots pressed tracks into snow already marked by others. A guard shouted once, then resumed smoking. Anton kept his head lowered, adjusting the torn blanket as wind pulled at its edges. The disguise was imperfect, almost careless, but it relied on something stronger than craft. It relied on repetition, and on the guards believing nothing changed. By midday, the compounds were sealed again. A number was crossed out and rewritten elsewhere. No alarm followed. Within the camp, absence was absorbed quickly, as if space itself closed behind him. What mattered then was not escape, but the silence that accepted it, the quiet machinery that allowed one body to become a miscount without consequence. The transfer columns reached a rail junction by nightfall. Prisoners were herded into wagons, doors sealed without ceremony. Inside, air thinned and speech disappeared. Anton stood pressed between bodies, blanket strips damp against his skin. At the first stop, names were called from a list already smudged by snow. One name was skipped. No correction followed. The train moved again, carrying fewer records than people. Days blurred into controlled motion. Columns formed, dissolved, reformed elsewhere. Anton remained within groups without belonging to them, always counted, never identified. The torn blanket stayed wrapped close, altered slightly each morning to match those around him. Guards focused on documents, stamps, and schedules. Faces passed unnoticed. Survival depended not on strength, but on fitting into the expected shape of suffering. In one holding camp, prisoners were ordered to surrender personal items. Anton handed over nothing. The blanket appeared whole enough when folded. A clerk marked compliance without inspection. Nearby, men argued quietly about missing brothers, missing sons. The clerk did not look up. Bureaucracy advanced with steady confidence, leaving grief behind like discarded packaging on frozen ground. Marches followed, shorter but harsher. Snow turned to mud, boots tore skin, and silence became a shared defense. Anton helped an older man tighten his coat once, receiving nothing in return. Such gestures carried no meaning beyond the moment. They were not recorded. Guards noticed only delays. The blanket, now dirt-stiff, still softened Anton's outline just enough. One evening, a guard questioned the count. The group froze. Papers were rechecked, numbers reconciled after minutes that felt longer. The total matched. No apology was offered. The march resumed. Anton felt then how fragile the trick was, and how strong the system remained. It did not need perfection, only consistency, and that consistency protected his error. Eventually, Anton vanished from formal routes. Not freed, not pursued, simply redirected into civilian labor under another name. The blanket was taken, repurposed, forgotten. No report noted its role. In later archives, his presence appears briefly, then stops. The gap is unexplained, one among thousands, closed by clerks who assumed completion. Years later, investigators would find mismatched tallies and untraceable transfers. Explanations were vague, attributed to weather, haste, or loss. No mention of torn fabric or altered silhouettes survived. The guards left no testimony about that winter. The system remembered efficiency, not oversight. Human improvisation left no mark strong enough to endure officially. What remains is absence shaped by routine, a silence held together by paper and habit. Some stories persist only through inference, stitched from margins and omissions. If you wish, leave a comment or follow to encounter more such quiet fragments, where the war is recalled not by triumph or defeat, but by what slipped unnoticed between numbers.